Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to War in the Pacific, Admirals Edition, in our Let's Play series against XTRG. It is March 12th of 1942, and we're looking at the combat replay for this turn. I don't have a lot to add. You know, the series has been going on for a while. We don't need to keep rehashing everything that's happening on every turn. There's some interesting maneuvers going around in China, I would say. Singapore is obviously still under siege and still holding out barely for the moment. But overall, the campaign is largely unchanged. Apparently, our S-34 is having flotation damage, or flotation repairs are failing, which isn't great. Looks like the Japanese are now landing on the coast south of Tarakan, or at least bombarding the side of the coast. We've got some coastal guns firing back here. I think this is another base, so that's good to see. Anytime we can hit the enemy landing force with artillery, that's good. I'm assuming we've got, these are the troops I think that retreated from Tarakan. So the guns of Tarakan are striking back again at the Japanese landing force as they attempt to come ashore here. Not quite as devastating. This is at Tanderjolor, I'm not even sure how to pronounce that. 13 coastal gun shots fired in defense. 2 of them hit the cargo ship Kamasura Maru. 1 hit the Terasuma Maru. And isn't this the same ship? Oh no, slightly different spelling. But looks like 4 shell hits into 3 different cargo ships did inflict a limited amount of casualties on the Japanese as they come ashore. The bombardment did a very small amount of damage to the coastal troops. And there you can see the Japanese are unloading over the beach, lose a few more casualties as a landing craft accident occurs, and here they come. Till the last shell they shall fight on. Indeed. They're obviously using Tulagi as some sort of either a way station or a major shipping depot, because we keep having coast watchers reporting ships there, which that's where we had a cruiser strike as a reminder a while back. So I'd love to send cruisers in there, but I think his air power over the Coral Sea probably makes that a non-starter. Meanwhile, we put another shell into a cargo ship here in the daylight phase off the coast of Borneo as well. 8 more shells fired in defense. Some task forces retreating due to air threat. I'm not sure what. I think the only task forces that would be there would be, well, there is a patrol boat task force, I think, at Singapore. They could be that. Otherwise, I was going to say they'd be subs, which I would just assume would dive. Okay, so we've got a bunch of anti-submarine warfare patrols by KI-48s over Port Moresby. As a reminder, we have a bunch of submarines at Moresby. Looks like there were some Japanese shipping icons there. Meanwhile, 8 Japanese Bettys are coming in toward Tijilap. Looks like they're probably flying out of Bandar Jasmine or Balikpapan. We've got 5 B-339D Buffaloes coming up to intercept. So we've got a little bit of an air battle. He's got 19 KI-43 1C Oscars. This is not, 1, we're outnumbered 4-1. 2, this is not a fair fight. The coastal watchers could be smoking some stuff too. That is possible. All right, so we lose 1 right off the bat. Let's go ahead and fast forward through this and see what happens. The 8 Bettys apparently are hitting naval. Oh shit! I forgot I sent these cruisers. I think I sent 2 light cruisers that were gonna try and intercept the landings at Palembang, but they were way late. And now it looks like Bettys are trying to bomb them. They were launching torpedoes. So he launched 8 torpedoes at these cruisers. None of them hit, fortunately. Our fighters, we lost 1 trying to intercept, and the Raleigh and the Detroit survived to fight another day. So where should those light cruisers go? I don't know. We'll have to see. Let's assume they get out of there safely. Yeah, Belugan, I think we had some intelligence saying they were putting in air HQs into Borneo, or maybe they were just Air Force construction units. I'm not sure. I can't really remember. Meanwhile, he's got a lot of Oscars flying escort duty over Singapore. Kind of surprising, unless maybe he converted those Nates into Oscars. That's also possible. But I'm not sure why he's flying so many Oscars over Singapore when he knows we don't have any fighters there, unless he thinks our carriers might come back and cap trap him like we did before. A couple of runway hits, bombing from 17,000 feet. He's still got the KI-43 Tojos, the half squadron that he has left. As a reminder, we shot down 3 or 4 of these guys. I think he gets 8 R&D Tojos to start the war. We shot down 3 or 4 of them when we cap-trapped Singapore, so that's what's left of his force, it looks like. I don't think I have enough mines to use aircraft to mine ports charcoal. Definitely something you can do later in the war, but right now I don't think I have the resources to do that. I'm not even sure if I have any aerial mines at the moment. Yeah, you definitely don't have enough mines. You don't have enough submarine mines. I think the mines that I lay off of, like, actual mine layers, I've got a reasonable number of them. I just put 300 into Palmyra the other turn. We put 400 into Port Moresby. I think we put 200 into Johnston Island. But generally speaking, yeah, you don't get enough mines. But I think that's probably an overreaction to War in the Pacific, the previous one, where you had way too many mines. Another large strike here at Singapore, but mostly escorts. He obviously didn't convert those nates. And again, not sure why he brought 70 fighters to escort a mere 6 bombers. But I'm glad that there's 70 fighters and not 70 bombers as he continues to pound Singapore. Okay. More unloading here at this base. Coastal guns are still shooting back and getting a couple of hits on these guys, but as a reminder, these are 75mm shells. They're not large enough to do a ton of damage to most of these ships. But we're continuing to damage them a little bit. Hopefully it clogs up his repair dockyards or something. All right, a Japanese bombardment attack at Singapore. 18th Division is at about 300 strength. Imperial Guards Division is at 80, so this division is really torn up and shattered. 5th Division is at about 50% strength. 48th Division is pretty close to full strength. You can see here several engineer units are pretty shot up. Several infantry regiments also pretty shot up from the various attacks that he's launched. 55th is, wow. Yeah. So a lot of his infantry regiments look like they're at about 50% strength at Singapore. I mean, obviously he's got enough men eventually to overrun us here. Meanwhile, bombardments occurring. He's got a lot of artillery there, so he'll probably do some damage to us. Okay, so he does do 95 casualties, 4 squads destroyed, 4 disabled. That's not great for us. That's a meaningful bombardment there. But nonetheless, it's not a deliberate attack, so we hold. Japanese bombardment of our 2 corps to the east of Quilin here. He's got 3 divisions in place now with a headquarters unit as well. So that's about 1,100, 1,200 assault value. With the defense bump that we get here, because this is ×3 terrain, though, we should be able to, I think, hold. So this would give us ×3, so we'd have like 1,200. So we'd have slightly more assault value than the attacker. 1-to-1 odds wouldn't really favor us, but I have a hunch that the rolls, given the terrain, would actually favor us slightly more. So I think we can hold here. I'm going to send another unit over here with about 200 more assault value just to make sure. But you can see that his bombardment did nothing, and in fact, it hurt him and didn't hurt us at all. All right, Japanese deliberate attack at Port Moresby. You can see here another attack at Moresby. Our fortifications are gone, as a reminder. Forts are at 0, I believe. Supplies are basically at 0. The only reason our units haven't zeroed out on supplies, we've been flying supplies in from Australia via transport planes to try and keep our combat effectiveness up. You can see it says they did reduce the fort level to 0. I think it was already 0. Fort level 0. Japanese assault reduces fortifications to 0. Okay. 1-to-1 assault odds. Japanese have almost 2-to-1 assault odds, but they didn't quite get to 2-to-1. They lost 196 men, casualties, 9 squads disabled. We lost 23 squads, 10 destroyed, 13 disabled. We also had one of our smaller units, I believe, destroyed. So Moresby holds, but it's a grinding sort of hold. So the main hope at this point has to be that he just doesn't have sufficient supplies to continue the assault there, and that he has to kind of wait for more supplies to come in. Moresby's definitely lost, but we didn't lose the base yet, I don't think. There are ship icons, yep. But he didn't bombard this turn, which is interesting. Japanese deliberate attack at Samput here. There's no troops here, so obviously he takes the base. Allied bombardment attack near whatever this base is called. Attack bombardment with what? We have nothing. Okay. Bombardment attack here east of Siam. This is also ×3 terrain. 3 Chinese corps versus 1 Japanese brigade in defense. So we have 4 times his assault value, but again, because of the ×3 terrain, I don't think it's worth the attack to drive him back. So I just bombarded to see what would happen. We don't really have a lot of artillery with our units, unfortunately. Most of these are mortars, which aren't particularly effective, so obviously that bombardment didn't really favor us. Japanese shock attack against the 108th RAF base force, which is sitting on the rail line south to Singapore. So he finally did attack here with a Royal Thai Infantry Division. He drove us back. Actually, no, he destroyed our unit here, so we lost the remaining non-combatants here. 23 non-combatant squads destroyed. So rather than retreating north toward Molman, they were wiped out. Another bombardment attack at Ambon. You can see here our Sparrow Battalion, which we sent in as reinforcements, continues to hang on there. Our defending force actually has slightly more assault value than him, but we basically have no supply. We're also flying in a small amount of supply via some PBYs out of Australia to these guys to keep them going. And you can see the bombardment attack didn't favor him at all. So I'm hoping that he has to divert additional reinforcements to Ambon to take it, because it's already been tying up a brigade for quite a long time, actually. No, Belugan. We removed the restriction on skip bombing, so we can now skip bomb. I sank 2 or 3 Japanese submarines in, was it Tulagi or was it, no, Esprit Santos, that were at port by skip bombing. So that was nice. Right now, our B-17s are largely repairing. Their air wings got battered up pretty bad, not in terms of shot down aircraft, but in terms of disabled aircraft. So I've been giving them 3 or 4 days of no training, no anything, nothing that involves operating their aircraft. But yes, we definitely should train them with naval bombing. Okay. So this should be it for the turn. It is. Let's go ahead and jump in and see what where we're at. All right. Let's go ahead and take a real quick look at Singapore, where the enemy continued to bombard and hurt us a little bit here. Our assault value at Singapore is pretty low. It's at 750. It was at 900 when the attack started. We really only have 3 effective units, the 27th Australia, the 11th Indian, and the 9th Indian. But we're still hanging on here. Good news is this turn the fortifications actually got back up to level 3. So that is a pretty awesome result here. So remember, he attacked 2 or 3 days ago and reduced the forts from 3 to 2. But now we just got the forts back up to 3. Yet again, that's the 3rd time that's happened. His attacks aren't being pressed home aggressively enough, and so we keep getting the fortification levels to go up. So that's good. Hopefully it allows Singapore to continue holding on. It's already more than a month past the historical date. Top important item, rename all carriers and heavy cruisers Belugan. No. Okay, so Singapore, meanwhile, still has 15,000 supplies, so it's doing okay. Level 3 forts. Meanwhile, Bataan is not really getting any attention at all from the Japanese. I decided this turn to start building fortifications here. I haven't been, mainly to preserve supply. They're just sitting at level 4, but with 312 engineers and 35 engineer vehicles, I'm wondering if maybe for the cost of 2,000 or 3,000 supply, I can get it up to level 5 before he starts attacking there, and that might be a pretty big thing to do. Again, I'm not sure whether that's the smart thing or not. I've held off on building mainly to preserve supply, but we've still got 19,000 supply. The supply really isn't dropping at all, and he's not bombing here very heavily either. So that was kind of my thought is, hey, if he's not going to bomb us and if our supply situation's okay, I think an extra fort level might be worth it, because eventually I don't think he's going to wait another 2 months. I got to imagine he's going to start attacking Bataan at some point. I can't imagine he'd be willing to just let our forces sit here till like May or June, which I think they almost have enough supply to get that far, but we'll see. As far as so Singapore, not a lot changed here. Obviously, they destroyed the base force unit here north of Bangkok. The British Infantry Division, the 18th British Division, the 1st Burma Division, and are both chilling at Pegu, both set to rest, actually. So we've got about 1,000 assault value here between all these different troops. I really need their preparation to get up to 100 so I can get their experience boost from training. But that's sort of the situation right now. I am moving the Tesserum BAF unit back to Rangoon because Rangoon currently doesn't actually have enough assault value here. It's at 115 of 120, so the garrison is too small. We're at level 3 forts in Rangoon, working toward level 4. Pegu is at level 3, working toward level 4. The shipping didn't get attacked this turn. Remember, we fought an air battle, and there were we claimed 13 zeros last turn and I think 2 Oscars, while we lost about 13 of our own fighters over Rangoon. He didn't hit Rangoon again this turn, and last turn I brought in 2 more Hurricane squadrons. So right now our Air Force in Rangoon is pretty strong here. We've got 121 fighters at Rangoon with 101 currently ready, 20 of those being Air Cobras, 33 of the ready fighters are Warhawks, and then the rest are Hurricanes, which now that we removed the maneuver band limitations, the Hurricane actually has a better ceiling altitude than anything the Japanese have. So when we do start engaging him again, we can bounce him. I switched everybody over to take the turn off to try and get fatigue back and to try and get some of those damaged airframes back, and it did work. He didn't attack. The gamble paid off, so that worked out for us pretty well. Meanwhile, I've also brought in 2 Hurricane squadrons toward Mandalay. There's not enough aviation support here to keep them here, but it was a slow transfer, so these guys are the ones that were in China. We flew them back to Mandalay, and then we're going to fly them down to Rangoon, potentially right away. So that'll give us up to 150 fighters at Rangoon, and then we'll be able to do that. I've been sending AKLs to Bataan with supply, but the last 3 or 4 Belugan that we sent, he sank. And he's got a lot of naval aviation in this general area, so I don't think it's worth the risk. We could try, maybe, I don't know. We are sending a lot of supply into Rangoon. So right now we've got a task force unloading 10,000 supply at Rangoon here, task force 185. And then another task force just arrived this turn at Rangoon carrying 42,000 supply. These guys can't dock yet because the other guys are still hogging the docks, but these should all finish unloading this turn, and then next turn we can start unloading much more efficiently anyway, this other group here. In terms of supply currently at the base, Rangoon has 64,000 supply, so it's very healthy. Pegu has about 20,000 supply as a forward base there. All these other bases have adequate supply, 3,200, 9,000, 7,000, 6,000. Mandalay has 12,000, 12,000 at Megwai. Lasho has just shy of 10,000. And then the roadway toward Pashoan, you can see Pashoan has 3,000. Suyong has 11,000, so this supply, I believe, moved to Suyong from Pashoan, and then Kuming has about 7,000. Supplies are flowing into China over the Burma Road, so that's good. 40,000 supply in Chongqing. It seems like the supply, at least in central and western China, might actually be overall going up right now, which is really good. Chikikai, meanwhile, level 3, 4 fortifications, working on level 5. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but between the level 4 fortifications, and the ×3 defensive modifier, this would be a very tough bar for him to try and attack across and shock attack. We've also got 4,300 assault value there, so that makes that unlikely. The troops to the east of the base as well, we've got a good amount of troops here, 2,200 assault value. The troops apparently are building forts. I don't know how forts outside of cities work, but it does look like a lot of these guys are dug into level 2 or level 1, which is good. Obviously, the supplies are a little bit of a problem. Down south here near Quilin, we've got these 2 corps. One of them has a fort level as well in ×3 defensive terrain. So hopefully that gives us a better edge when he does come and attack us. And then we've got the 4,700 or 470 assault value here east of Quilin. Now, Quilin itself is somewhat under-defended. It's already a level 3 fort, but it really doesn't have much in the way of assault value there currently. We've got the 2nd Provisional Chinese Corps, which is a weak Chinese Corps sitting there. We've got a base force unit there. Wait, we have a base force unit, but we only have 4 engineers? How's that work? There's only 1 engineer in this base force unit? Well, that's worthless. God, I hate the lack of engineers and vehicles in China. We also have 1 unit, sort of an element of the 60th Corps out in front of Quilin as sort of a tripwire. Again, it's good defensive terrain. It's ×3 defensive terrain here. So it's on the minor roads if he were to try and advance up from Wuchou and Canton toward the front of this railway line. I also received some additional reinforcements at Luchou. They were coming down from Chongqing, so we're up to about 500 assault value here. This is only a ×2 defensive terrain hex. I'm actually going to take the 3rd Chinese Cavalry Corps and move it east to try and get into the mountains here to reinforce these troops as well. If not, we'll meet them up here if they get driven back. Because I think that's the most likely avenue of advance. This is west along this railway. And then we've got additional reinforcements coming down south here. We've got 3 Chinese corps which left this river line here of about 1,000 assault value here. They'll be in this next hex south here. And the main purpose of these guys is if Quilin falls and he wants to advance up this minor roadway to get in behind Chikikong's rear, then we'll have very good defensive terrain even behind a river here where we can put 1,000 assault value. Or if he doesn't push us very quickly, I can move these troops all the way down into Quilin and defend there. Actually, I was wrong, by the way. Luchou is clear terrain. So that's if he advanced there, that would be bad for us, but it's much more difficult for him to advance that way than west along the roadways. Not really on the offensive anywhere, Ivan, at the moment. We did do something nifty in China. So, as you guys remember, a couple turns ago, he had advanced north from Nanyang with about 2,000 assault value. He was advancing on Sian along this good roadway here. We snuck in a force of about, I want to say it was 1,500 assault value here into his rear, and we took Nanyang back from him. That effectively cut this entire force off. And it was all the way up here in this hex, I think it was. They were advancing. We didn't have any troops here, so we were 1 hex out from Sian. He was advancing on us. We snuck in behind him at Nanyang. We took the base. He then pulled those troops back 92 miles. We've since advanced into the gap with a strong force here of 1,400 assault value. Good defensive terrain, ×3 defensive terrain here. And so he pulled back. He did savage these troops a bit. He inflicted about 300 assault value casualties on these guys in open terrain near Nanyang. We're pulling these guys back into the mountains here along this roadway, and so we delayed and drove him back in sort of a tactical movement, but it wasn't really a huge offensive by any means. It looks like he's bringing up some reinforcements over here to the east of these troops that are east of Sian, so he's kind of advancing on Sian perhaps from 2 directions. We have 3 corps here, again about just shy of 1,000 assault value here, in front of this single brigade of Japanese troops. But I do have some reinforcements that are going to move to the east as well. So we've got 3 Chinese corps all moving east to reinforce these guys to almost double our strength there. So it'll bring us up to another 800 assault value, basically. So we'll have just shy of 1,800 assault value in this good defensive terrain to the east of Sian, while we have about 1,500 to the south near Sian. Also, these troops still look like they're pulling back toward Nanyang, at least one of them. You can see this little marker on this infantry unit means it's moving south. You can see our units over here are moving west because they've got a little marker there. So that's good. Johnny Carvin, thank you very much for the follow. Okay, so that's the situation in China. Burma, we just keep trying to flood as many supplies in, and my hope is at this point is that like once he penetrates and Rangoon is about to be surrounded, then I will just I will completely reduce the supply settings in Rangoon. So I'll change the supply requested. Well, it already is basically 0, but I'll keep the supply requested 0. I'll jack the supply requested up in Mandalay so that hopefully like 50,000 supplies will flow east along these roadways into the interior so that Japan doesn't capture a massive supply depot, while also ensuring that our troops are ready to continue the fight there. Like a G-Man, I am not attacking these troops east of Sian. They have nearly a 4-to-1 advantage in terms of assault value, but the terrain is so bad that I think that even if we drive him back, the casualties will not be worth gaining a hex temporarily. So at least not unless these 3 corps arrive before his reinforcements arrive. Ivan, I don't know if I can hold Rangoon. I think my air situation in Rangoon is pretty good. We've got 120 fighters with another 32 north and Mandalay. So we've got 150, basically all frontline fighters between Warhawks, a few Air Cobras, and Hurricanes. He only has about 90 fighters, according to intelligence, at Bangkok. He swept with about 70 zeros over Rangoon. So, I mean, he probably can wear our Air Force down over Rangoon, but we can also inflict heavy losses on his pilot pool, which would be great. So the hope is obviously that we can hold there at least for a while. We do have forces in front of Rangoon. We've got the 1st Burma Division. We've got the 18th British Infantry Division. We're about to be able to form up the 17th Indian Division because we've got the 48th Gurkhas and the 16th Indian Brigade, and then we also have another Indian Brigade coming south, the 63rd Indian Brigade. So we'll be able to form up the 17th Infantry Division with another 200 plus assault value. So we'll have a very strong force at Pegu, and we may drive south toward Molmun to see if we can take this airfield because it is a level 4 airfield, so that would be great to push his air units back to have to operate out of Bangkok with really high ops losses over such a long distance. But I'm not sure yet if that's feasible or not. We need a little bit more time to really make that determination. Pegu is an ideal defensive location, but I did realize last turn that it is in theory on a body of water. Rangoon is up a river, so you can't sail battleships up to Rangoon, but he theoretically could bombard Pegu. As you remember at Moresby, he hit Moresby with like 4 battleships, and the base evaporated. So we've got 84, 81, and 50 damage at the base at Moresby. The supply was basically destroyed. There were 10,000 supply there that just went away in a single turn with a heavy naval bombardment. So my fear is that he could bombard Pegu and completely wreck these forces here. The problem with withdrawing from Pegu to Rangoon is because of the way these roads work, this road network, where is it? This road network allows him to very easily flank Rangoon to the north by moving out of Pegu or to the north there, or even moving up the railway to the west, northwest along this railway. So Rangoon is really easy for him to isolate and then bag a huge army. So I really don't want to make a huge defense at Rangoon. I'd like to get my forts up to a high enough level, maybe stash a brigade or 2 at Rangoon to fight a delaying action. But I really want to get those divisions out of Rangoon and into northern Burma and avoid a major battle at Rangoon if I can. Narbeth, yes, this is a play-by-email game. I don't know how else you could play a game like this except play-by-email with this much depth, this many units, this much complexity. I just don't think you could do it in real time. Okay, so why is there a troop transport at Port Blair? Why would I do that? So I should probably move this guy. I don't know why. I don't want to pull anyone out of Port Blair, so let's pull him back to Colombo. Port Blair I'm not counterattacking yet, so as a reminder, he landed 1,000 paratroopers here with about 20 assault value. They attacked against a garrison unit, but they were still in strat moves, so they got savaged pretty bad. But we didn't have any reinforcements there, so then we flew in the RM Viper force, which has 8 assault value right now. It has 9 commando paratrooper sections here. So between the 9 paratrooper units, which are very good units, and the fact that it's jungle terrain, which gives it like a ×3 defensive bonus, jungle terrain, JR or JG. So it's ×2, I guess. I think it was JG, right? Yeah, JG. So it's a ×2 defense, plus it's a level 2 fort. I think that's more than enough to hold out against the troops that he's put at Port Blair, especially if they don't have any supply, which he'd have to be bringing everything in via air. We did fly a few Buffaloes out here, and they interdicted some of his air units moving over. But I don't think that I can counterattack, because the same problem that we're going to suffer is we'd be going against ×2 terrain against his troops if we counterattack. So unless they're completely out of supply in Port Blair, then I don't think it would be a smart move at this time. I may try and bring some additional reinforcements out of the Gloucester Battalion down here to Port Blair, but at the moment I think we're going to leave things as is. You said I had troops on deliberate attack near... Oh, that would have been dumb. I don't even want to bombard anymore. Let's just set them to defend. The bombardment wasn't going well, and it's going to chew through supply, so there's no real point to that. Okay, so anyway, so Port Blair's going to kind of sit as it is for now. Meanwhile, I'm going to leave my aircraft in Rangoon away from reinforcing Port Blair for the moment because what they're doing is they're pulling out a headquarter unit from Singapore. So we have started evacuating the where are they? The 223 group, the 223 RAF group /2. We've got 468 of their load cost out. The remaining elements of the unit are on a railway track on the way to Sabang and then at Sabang. So Sabang has about 500 load cost left. So that's roughly, a little bit more than a third is already to Rangoon. And then the remainder of it is still on Sumatra. So we're flying some of these guys out. This 223 group, again, they're on rail cars on their way to Sabang. These guys here, this remainder of the 223 group is chilling here as well, and they're slowly getting pulled out at, I think about 200 assault value per turn. So they should be completely out in about 3 days. Well, no, actually, with these guys coming north, it'll probably be closer to about 4 days. But we should have the 223 group totally out in 4 days, and then we'll start transporting the 224 group, which we've pulled about 156 of it out here. We also have shorter range transport aircraft at Medan that have pulled about 996 of the 224 group out, and then we have just a very small amount of the 224 group is left in Singapore, just 96 load cost here. So the remaining elements of the 224 group will be out of Singapore tomorrow, and then they'll be moving north. Now, one thing I was considering is I have moved a transport in. It hasn't been detected here. There's one transport that's moving into Sabang. My thought was maybe I would throw these transports onto, or these troops onto transports and try and evacuate them. But depending on where his naval bombers are, if his naval bombers are primarily up at Bangkok, that's 16 hexes, they might be safe. But if he's got naval bombers on the Malay Peninsula, that could be asking to just have the whole unit sunk at sea. So I'm not quite sure whether I want to do that or not. They'll be at Sabang next turn, and I guess what I'll see is if they get sunk before they load anything up, or if they get detected by anything, then maybe I won't do it. I could try and fly some of the longer-ranged aircraft, some of the P-40s with drop tanks down to Sabang to give them some cover. We do have aviation support, though not much here, and some of it's already being used to transport aircraft, but that's kind of what we're looking at. So there's that. Palembang is still hanging out. He's landed 15,000 troops, 14 units, mostly engineers to Palembang. We don't have a lot of troops here. We've got 61 assault value here. We've got 1 level fort here, so he will overwhelm us eventually. We do have one thing working for us is that it's swamp terrain, which gives an advantage to the defender. Swamp is ×3 as well, so it's good defensive terrain for us. I also have some troops that are marching south to Padang Garrison. If they can get there in time, they would add another 36 assault value. It looks like they will probably be to this next hex next turn, so they're probably about 3 days out from Palembang. So if he doesn't take it by then, we'll have some reinforcements there. He's also sent some ships, it looks like some PT boats and destroyers and some cruisers to Toblai, and they're moving west, so I'm not sure where they're going. Maybe he's going to land a small force at Oosthaven, I'm not sure. We have our cruisers here at Tijulap that were dodging those Japanese torpedoes. I've ordered them to move west toward Christmas Island, and then we're going to sort of sit off the west coast of Oosthaven up here. I'm wondering if I should disband them and put them in the port, though, because they've suffered about 430 ops cost. If he's flying out of Bandar Jasmine, Tijulap is 11 hexes away. It looks like they'll get about 3 hexes before daylight, so they'll get out to here, which would be 13, which is still inside torpedo range. So maybe we would be better to disband them into the port. I doubt he has his aircraft set to port attack, and then the next turn sail them out west and then north. Because if we sit west of Oosthaven right now, he's got aircraft at Swing Kang. We don't know how much, but that's 16 hexes away. I believe that's outside of torpedo range. He could still hit with bombs. And Bandar Jasmine's even further away at 17 hexes. So if we go and we take a look at the land-based... not that. If we go ahead and we take a look at the database here, and we look at the aircraft database for the Japanese, and we go down to the G4M1 Bettys that we saw here, you can see these guys have extended range of 21. So, their normal radius is 17, which means they can hit with torpedoes out to 17. So we probably... That's too close then. They've got a 10 out of the 10 detection, which is bad. So what we could do is we could move them out 1 more hex further west here to Oosthaven. That still probably gets him in range to be able to sprint into Oosthaven to hit a landing force in the night or at first thing in the morning before his air attacks can come in. It would also put you 19 hexes out of Bandar Jasmine. That is outside of torpedo range. Swing Kang would be 18. That would also be out of torpedo range. And so that might be the right might be a good idea. But I think what I'll do for this turn is I will disband these guys into the port for one turn, because he has not been doing port attacks. So my assumption is that he will not hit Tijlap again. We could also move some of our hurricane, our Dutch hurricanes, down here to Tijlap as well, and we could fly top cover over Tijlap in case he does go after the port. So we could potentially break up the effectiveness of his attack by bringing our 12 hurricanes and then our 7 Warhawks down here to Tijlap, so we could actually intercept him with 20 fighters, which might make the attack less effective. So we'll do that. These guys' fatigue is only 2. It was a short flight. So we'll set these guys to escort. We'll set these guys to maximum range of 0. We'll set these guys to cap at 100. And then we'll set them to 35,000 so that they're above any of the Japanese fighters. We'll set the P-40s at about 20,000 because they can't get quite as high. And then set them to 100 cap. And then we've already got the Buffaloes set to 100 cap at 15,000, so maybe they'll draw them down altitude-wise. 0 range, 0 range, 0 range. I don't want the cap to leak out over any other hexes. Okay. Air losses today. Aircraft losses. We lost 3 aircraft. He lost 1. It was a very light day in terms of air losses. We lost 2 of those Dutch Buffaloes over Tijlap. He lost 1-0 to ops losses. We lost 1 PBY Catalina to ops losses. Probably went down with some troops on board, too. Those were probably coming out of Rangoon. And that was it today. So a very light day. Yesterday was a big day. Yesterday we shot down over 19 Japanese aircraft. Mostly, I think 15 of those were around Rangoon, and 13 of those were Zeros. So presumably a fair number of Japanese pilots lost in those attacks. Today we lost both of our Dutch pilots who were in those planes that went down. We've got a bunch of aces here at this point in the war because we've managed to savage several of the Japanese formations, but we've also got a couple of KIA aces. Good news is Pappy Boyington still alive, Major Boyington still with the Flying Tigers at the moment. Also, other good news, so we did pull out the AVGs out of Rangoon because they've suffered pretty heavy losses without any replacements. So I am going to, I think, replace these guys with P-38 Lightnings once I've got 27 of them. So we've already pulled about 40 Lightnings out of squadrons on the U.S. West Coast. So as soon as 3 or 4 more days pass when the rest of those aircraft hit the pools, I'm going to go ahead and replace these guys to 27 to fill this squadron out with 27 Thunderbolts, or not Thunderbolts, Lightnings. We've got good pilots in this group, multiple guys over 80, a lot of guys over 70. I may pull some other guys out of the reserve to really make it a crack unit. It does go away in July, but I think the Lightnings will be burned out by then anyway, and then I can always switch the aircraft to something else by then, like Mohawks or something. Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing most of the sorties I'm lacking Belugan are I'm not doing enough naval search, I would guess, or maybe some training. I'm not sure. I think most of my training is set to like 60%. I'm not very active with the Dutch Air Force. I'm not very active. I'm not as active as I should be training pilots in India with the British, like, recon groups that are out here, like the Lysanders and whatever. I did go ahead and set these. I need to set them up to 60. They should be set to 60 training. And then I think, 7,000 feet is usually the altitude. And then no range. So we'll set all those guys here. These guys, I don't even care. There's only 1 aircraft. Yeah, okay. But I need to set more guys to that. Carriers are south of Australia, pulling back from their cap trap over Singapore. So these guys are well south of Australia, deep in the Southern Ocean. And you can see here they're on their way to Melbourne. So the carriers are pretty well clear of any threats, I assume, at the moment. Not a lot of systems damage. They're doing okay there. And the fighter groups are in relatively good shape. These guys didn't lose those casualties, actually. They just never filled out fully. So you can see here we're actually operating a task force with 3 U.S. carriers, the Enterprise, Saratoga, and Lexington here. And then we've got the Yorktown over here, as well as the British carrier, the Indomitable, in the 5th Fleet. So the 5th Fleet is under Spruance here. The 3rd Fleet is under Halsey here. Meanwhile, the Hornet has just recently arrived, and she's sprinting to the Panama Canal. So she'll be at the western or the eastern end of the Panama Canal at Cristobal next turn. She'll be arriving over there. She's going to meet up with 2 destroyers at Cristobal. She's going to meet up with a heavy cruiser at Balboa, and then we'll move her to the U.S. West Coast to begin preparation for the American carriers arriving. I did rename them. Didn't you just see that? They were renamed. 3rd Fleet. 5th Fleet. Hey, corny joke. How you doing? By the way, I don't know if I thanked Red Rackham, Brass Wind Chimes. Thanks for the follows. I don't feel like renaming my new ship's offensive things, Belugan. Do you mean like offensive-minded, as in like attack or something? We can come up with some crazy like British names, you know, just, well, I guess we've got British ships already. The British ships have way better names, by the way. Meanwhile, it looks like the 6 heavy AA units almost in Sydney. The British division, I think, has already arrived, or the Australian division's already arrived here, I think. No? Where did I put the Aussies? Oh, they're over here. So the 6th Australian Division is heading east. They're actually preparing for Comac. I don't know if I'll land them there or not, but currently they're preparing for Comac if we begin our counteroffensive against the Japanese at New Caledonia. Meanwhile, we're continuing to unload more engineers at Tongatapu, and Vavu is already unloaded. We've got the 2nd Marine Regiment here. We are building fortifications and runways and runways here. Actually, no, we're not building fortifications. We're just building the port. I'm trying to get this airfield up to level 1, because once it's up to level 1, then I can shuttle these P-40s between Pago and Suva. Suva's up to level 4 fortifications. Suva is also home to a very large airfield and a large number of aircraft. We've got 55 fighter aircraft with largely experienced crews, at least is for the Allies at this point. We've got 19 P-40Bs, and then we've got 36 F-4, F-3 Wildcats at Suva. We've also got a few heavy bombers here. We've got 16 B-17s. 5 of them are inoperable right now. They're currently resting here. Do we have any medium bombers here? We've got some Hudsons, some A-20 Havocs, and I think we've got some dive bombers too. We've got 36 Dauntless dive bombers. So Suva's a nice little air base for us. We also have more aircraft east at Pago, which is another major base for us. We've got 45 fighters at Pago. 40 of them, or they're all P-40s, 25 of them P-40Es, 20 of them P-40Bs. The P-40Es can already fly directly to Suva if we needed to, if the Japanese show up there in force and reinforce it. But the P-40Bs don't have the legs. That's why we're building the airfield at Vavu. Vavu, Pago, and Suva are sort of the triangle of defense here of self-supporting bases. We've put some engineers ashore at Tongatapu, mainly so that it's not unoccupied, but also so that we can build airfields here. And then we've also put some New Zealand engineers ashore at Raoul, one because he tried to sneak in a destroyer group of troops here so they wouldn't be unescorted or unoccupied if he tried to land here. Also because we want to turn this into an actual base so that we can shuttle aircraft from New Zealand north to the Fiji line as well. We should name a ship Dreadnought, Belugan. Yeah, holding New Caledonia is a big threat. The supply line to New Caledonia is also likely vulnerable. Meanwhile, we've reinforced Palmyra with some additional troops. The 2nd or 4th Marine Defense Battalion arrived just after that bombardment, I think it was. We've also mined Palmyra, so we've got 297 mines at Palmyra, level 3 forts already. Christmas Island has Canadians. Yes, that's right, Canadians in the Pacific. The 13th Canadian Brigade is the main defensive line at Christmas Island. Why are these guys resting? Oh, because they're at 100. I wanted to get their experience up a bit. I was trying to rest train them. But anyway, so we've got a stronger AV at Christmas Island, but the Canadian troops are mostly militia. So if you did come knocking there, they'd be militia troops, which aren't great. You can see their experience is only 46, the morale is 77. But we also have mines here as well. We also have a level 3 fort, or level 2 fort here, almost to level 3. I'd have to double check and make sure that those aren't the only engineers that are resting right now. No, we've got port service, which I'm assuming, nope, no engineers there. So we should probably stop resting these guys until we get to level 3 forts, because these guys are our engineers here. Okay, the Mounties are regulars. Are there Mounties? No, there is a Royal Canadian Mounted Police unit somewhere on the west coast of Canada. But you can see here we're building up here. We've also got about 400 mines at Christmas Island, so a good number of anti-ship mines here as well. And then we've got a lot of patrol aircraft flying some sorties off both of these islands as well. We did recon over Canton Island. We see he's got a small garrison at Canton, so if we were to try and attack, that might be a place we could try and attack at some point in the near future. Savi as well, if we knew where the carriers were and if they were somewhere further out. He's got one unit on Savi here, but he hasn't really put much in here. I think he knows he can't really support a big base there. It's too close to us at the moment. Meanwhile, we just mined Johnston Island as well, so you can see these mine layers are all returning to Pearl Harbor. More mine layers down here returning to Pearl Harbor. So Johnston Island is up to 274 defensive mines with level 3 forts. Johnston Island has 2 Marine Defense Battalions as well as a Johnson Island Detachment Defensive Battalion. A lot of Marines at both those bases. Yeah. Oh, the police units that took the regulars that, yeah, I accidentally had replacements turned on and they ate our Canadian regular replacements. Oh, well, the militia might have the retired Mounties then, Belugan. Good old salts. I've never seen the option to disband like any of those units. So, where are they anyway? I don't even remember. Rifles Canadian Battalion. These are regular Canadian infantry. I think this is one of those units we raised because they're nowhere near their TOE. First Irish Fusiliers also have been re-raised, but they're mostly they're just militia. I don't know where those other guys were. 14th Canadian Brigade off the west coast of Canada. More Canadian militia. We could spend some points and unlock these guys. I've got 900 political points, which is actually quite a lot. Right now, I am planning on using that down here. So we've broken up the 40th Infantry Division into 3 segments. This is a good division in terms of the equipment, in terms of the quality of the unit. It's very expensive to change its headquarters. We're currently having them plan for Palmyra because I thought when he was attacking there with his air force that a landing force might be coming. It didn't materialize. But for the moment, I haven't changed these guys' headquarters yet, mainly because I wanted to preserve my flexibility. I do want to get the 40th Division into the fight, but I don't have enough to bring the whole division right now. I could bring 1/3 of the division and put it somewhere as a defensive unit. That might be the smart thing to do, but again, it would use almost all my political points up. So while I was building that up, I was kind of debating what to do with those units. Okay. I think that's about it, guys. We've kind of covered everything. I'm not sure. I mean, we can see Moresby's not in great shape. These units took a beating. We lost I think it was a company of the New Guinea Rifles is what was destroyed. We've got a couple of units that are still reasonably kicking in terms of strength, but the supply situation is bad. I almost wonder if it would be better for us if the base fell because the airfield runway damage was like 80% like 2 turns ago. So our engineers, now that they have supply, are repairing this stuff, which I would rather they not. But I can't turn that off. Hey, Belugan, when you're training pilots, when do you put them into the reserve pool? What do you want their experience to get up to? Also, does it matter that they're well-rounded pilots, or can they be like 50 experienced pilots with like 70 air combat experience, and then are they like, if I'm not going to use them for anything except fighters, does it matter? Okay. No, I know the pools are separate, but my point is like, so if I go down here and I go to one of the fighter groups at Suva, let's take a look at these F4, F3 Wildcats. This unit has an average experience of 66, so it's obviously a very good unit, a lot of good pilots in here. But you can see where is it? Where's air combat? Air, right here. So every guy here's air skills are pretty much 60 plus with like a handful of exceptions. But then their other values here are really low. So I don't know what really drives their total experience level, but the air is obviously the most important, I think. Okay. In any event, so I think that's probably it for this episode. I know we've got quite a few people watching. We've got a good turnout here tonight, but I don't have a lot else to show. I think it's a quiet turn. I'll probably throw the Rangoon fighters back on cap just because I don't want him to surprise my aircraft on the ground if he tries to bomb the base. So we'll probably throw these guys back up into cap at 50 or 60% or so. With varying altitudes, with the Hurricane's all above his minimum altitude, and then using the Warhawks and Air Cobras to draw him down to more advantageous altitudes to fight. I'll continue pulling the 223 group out to Rangoon, as well as the 224 group out to Sumatra. I will... I don't know what else I'm really going to do this turn. There's not a ton to do. I'll probably take a look at some of my air units here to see if I can change some of the training regimens around a little bit to get better training going on, although I think in the macro, the Allies have a lot more flexibility with getting away with that later in the campaign. But as far as anything else, I mean, again, we've got some logistical stuff going on. Do not unload. Okay. These tankers are on their way with about 40,000 supplies to Sydney. Or actually, I think that was 40,000 fuel. We've got a bunch more fuel coming in. We actually just snuck about 12,000 fuel and oil out of Java, out of Tigilap a couple turns back. The 6,600 oil is just about to arrive in Perth, which will be nice because we do have one refinery in Melbourne, which does need a little bit of oil. I don't think we really have any oil left in Australia right now. And then we've got 32,000 fuel coming in here to Perth as well out of Colombo. And then we've got 30,000 fuel coming out here out of Cape Town. We've got another 5,000 fuel coming out here. We've poured probably about 400,000 to 500,000 fuel already into Perth, which is really what's fueling the Australian economy right now. I haven't turned the factories off, so we're using that fuel supply more so than offensive naval operations because there's not a lot going on there, is to build supply caches in Australia. So you see Perth supplies are a little bit low. I think Sydney's got like 600,000 supply, and then Melbourne... Most of the other bases are pretty low on supply. It seems like Sydney's is hogging it all. But in any event. Yeah, anyway, that's going to do it for tonight, guys. Thanks for coming out for yet another episode of War in the Pacific Admirals Edition. Hope you guys enjoyed the stream. And until next time, as always, this is the Historical Gamer saying once again, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, I'm out.